Atlanta stepped into early summer with waves of sticky heat that clung to everything, making the air feel heavy and unforgiving. The city never truly slept, but it didn't wake up fully. Either the hum of traffic and distant sirens blended into a constant background noise. Streetlights cast long shadows over the bustling streets below, reflecting off the curved glass facade of the Haven Hotel where the 43rd floor sat in an unnatural silence. In the penthouse suite, sprawling over 300 square meters, a black man sat motionless by the window. His name was Malik Devon, 38 years old. He wore a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing faint scars on his left arm. Marks not from his recent car accident, but from a distant past as a teenager in South Chicago where survival came before dreams. Those scars were souvenirs from street fights, unwarranted police stops, and the constant reminder that society often viewed him as a threat simply for existing. Malik gazed down at the stream of cars below luxury sedans crawling in traffic, their headlights piercing the dusk. From this height, everything looked small and manageable, but he knew that stepping into the world below would strip away that illusion. He'd be the one scrutinized first, not for being poor or poorly dressed, but for being a black man. In boardrooms and galas, eyes would linger a second too long, questions laced with unspoken assumptions. How did you make it here? As if his success were an anomaly, not the result of relentless work. On the glass table behind him sat 2 engagement rings, nestled side by side in a deep blue velvet box. Malik had chosen them carefully, not for their exorbitant price, but for their simplicity. No flashy diamonds, just understated elegance that mirrored his own life. He was the founder of Devon Secure Systems, a cybersecurity AI firm that had secured over $700 million in federal contracts over the past 5 years. Yet in press releases, conferences, and articles, his name was rarely front and center. They talked about the technology, the products, the leadership team, anything but the black man who built it all from scratch. Discrimination wasn't always overt. Sometimes it was the subtle erasure, the way conversation shifted when he entered a room, or the hesitation in handshakes. Malik had grown accustomed to it, navigating the world with quiet determination. That is until he met Samantha Rhodes 3 months ago at a private fundraiser in Midtown Manhattan. He arrived late, slipping into a corner seat to observe the crowd of investors and philanthropists. Samantha was the only one who approached him, unprompted, her light blonde hair catching the dim lights. Her sharp smile disarming, her voice commanding attention, even in a whisper. She didn't ask about his job or his wealth. Instead, she dove straight into a question about humanity's growing reliance on machines for decisions. Malik was captivated not by her looks, but by the fact that for the first time someone saw him without the lens of stereotype or exception. They talked late into the night, debating ethics in AI, sharing laughs over industry absurdities. Their connection deepened quickly, almost too quickly, leaving Malik wondering if it was all a dream. A woman like Samantha stepping into his life so effortlessly seemed almost too perfect. Then came the accident on Interstate 85 just before midnight. A semi-truck swerved out of control, slamming into his car with the deafening crunch of metal. The acrid smell of gasoline filled the air as emergency lights flashed. Malik woke in the hospital, pain radiating through his body. The headlines hit the next morning. Black entrepreneur survives severe crash, faces possible permanent paralysis below the waist. Stock prices fluctuated. The board convened emergency meetings. Samantha sat by his bedside, holding his hand tightly, at least for the first 2 days. Only Malik, his chief physician and his personal lawyer, knew the truth he would recover fully. It wouldn't be immediate, but the prognosis was good. Malik insisted on secrecy, not to deceive the world, but to observe it clearly. What would happen if he were no longer the valuable man, the successful black entrepreneur who would stay when he appeared broken? He chose the wheelchair, settling into it with a resolve born from years of being underestimated. And so he began to watch. The hospital room on the 17th floor of the private clinic flooded with bright light every morning at exactly 9 o'clock, the time Samantha arrived. Not a minute early, not a minute late, as if her visits were scripted on a calendar app. She always dressed impeccably, form-fitting dresses, high heels clicking against the tiled floor, and a cloud of expensive perfume that lingered long after she left. Each time she leaned down to plant a light kiss on Malik's forehead right in front of the reporter's cameras, crafting the perfect image of a devoted woman standing by her disabled partner. But as soon as the journalists packed up and exited, Samantha straightened up, her eyes immediately glued to her phone screen. "How are you feeling?" she asked, her tone flat, more like a formality than genuine concern. Malik watched her, searching for the spark that had drawn him in months ago. "Worse than yesterday," he replied softly. She nodded absently, as if noting a minor detail in the report. "The doctors say patience is key." He reached out his hand, hoping for a real connection. Samantha placed hers on top for a brief second before pulling away, smoothing her dress as she glanced at the clock. "I have a meeting at 11. I need to head out soon. Could you stay just 10 more minutes?" Malik asked, his voice steady but vulnerable. She smiled that polished, performative smile. "You know how it is. Work is piling up." He nodded, letting the moment pass without argument. A week slipped by like that. Samantha's visits tapered to every other day. Flowers arrived promptly from high-end florists and gift baskets filled with gourmet treats stacked up in the corner, untouched. But her eyes grew distant, her presence more obligatory than affectionate. One afternoon she sat by the bed, adjusting her skirt and scrolling through emails as she spoke. "You know, yesterday, someone asked me if I was really prepared to spend my life with a disabled man. I told them yes, because of love. Everyone was so touched." Her smile lingered, but Malik saw through it now, the calculation behind it, the way she leveraged their story for public sympathy, perhaps even for her own career boost in the cutthroat world of venture capital. As a successful black man, Malik was no stranger to discrimination. He'd been labeled an exceptional case in boardrooms where his ideas were credited to the team, while his presence often invited subtle side glances or questions laced with doubt. Now confined to a wheelchair, he felt it amplified. Society viewed him not just as an outsider, but as a burden, his worth diminished overnight. Samantha never asked about his pain, never probed deeper into his fears. She focused on the optics, the photo ops with media, the carefully worded social media posts about resilience and commitment. That night, as Malik closed his eyes and pretended to sleep, he heard her voice drop to a whisper on a phone call, her back turned to him. "I don't know how much of his assets are still in his personal name," she murmured, "but if we marry soon, it could still salvage everything." Malik's eyes snapped open in the darkness. He didn't move. He didn't breathe heavily. He just stared at the ceiling, the sterile white panels mocking him. No anger surged through him, not yet. Instead, clarity washed over like cold water. The plan to feign paralysis was no longer just an experiment. It had become essential a lens to expose the truth hidden beneath the surface. Malik stopped calling Samantha to the hospital. He cited intensive therapy sessions and the need for rest, his voice steady over the phone. She responded with polite concern, sending more flowers and scheduling video calls every 3 days, brief surface-level check-ins that felt more like obligations than affection. To her, it seemed like he was withdrawing, perhaps resigning to his fate. But in reality, Malik was preparing, piecing together the fragments of truth he'd glimpsed in her whispered phone calls and distant eyes. He reached out to his trusted lawyer, Ray Simmons, a sharp-minded veteran who'd been with him since the early days of Devon's secure systems, navigating the legal minefields that came with being a black entrepreneur in a world quick to question legitimacy. "Ray, I need her to sign a new prenup," Malik said during their discreet meeting in the hospital room, the curtains drawn against prying eyes. Ray leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Are you sure about this after what you overheard?" "I'm sure," Malik replied, his tone unyielding. "I want to see her face when she realizes I haven't lost a thing." Ray nodded, understanding the weight of it. As a black man who'd faced his own battles in the courtroom, subtle biases in judges' rulings, assumptions about his clients, he knew the value of clarity in a world full of hidden agendas. He drafted the document swiftly. All of Malik's personal assets would remain separate, no division in case of divorce, and a symbolic $1 dowry clause to underscore the point. Samantha was summoned to a meeting on Monday morning at the conference room on the 21st floor of the Devon Global Building. She arrived dressed in a crisp white pantsuit, her hair pulled back tightly, exuding the confidence of someone who believed she still held the upper hand. Malik waited in his wheelchair, back straight, expression neutral, flanked by Ray and a notary. "I'm surprised you wanted to meet here," Samantha said as she took a seat, her eyes flicking around the sleek room with its panoramic views of the city. "Are you feeling better?" "Better enough," Malik answered evenly. "And clear-headed enough to think about our future." Ray slid the prenup across the table. Samantha scanned at her eyebrows, knitting slightly at the clauses, his fortune locked away, no claims post-divorce, the insulting $1 provision. She looked up, her smile thin. "Is this a test?" she asked, her voice laced with amusement that didn't reach her eyes. "It's assurance," Malik said. "If you're marrying me for love, these terms shouldn't matter." She held his gaze for a moment, then laughed softly, a sound that echoed hollow in the room. "You need certainty. I get it." Without further hesitation, she signed her name in fluid strokes, as if the document were just another routine contract in her high-stakes world. Malik nodded. "Congratulations, then." "For what?" "For this." In one deliberate motion, Malik pushed himself up from the wheelchair. No wobble, no strain, just steady, controlled strength as he stood tall. The room seemed to freeze, the hum of the air conditioning, the only sound breaking the silence. Samantha's face drained of color, her eyes widening in shock. You can walk. The accident was real," Malik said calmly, stepping around the table. "The injuries were real. But sitting in that chair for the past 3 weeks, that was a choice." "You spied on me!" Her voice rose, a mix of accusation and panic. "No, I observed. And you performed brilliantly." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "I heard your calls, Samantha. The calculations about my assets, the rush to marry before I lost everything." She stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. "You trapped me. This is entrapment." "I stayed silent," Malik countered, his voice level. You revealed yourself. In a world where people like me, black men, are always under scrutiny, always having to prove our worth, I needed to know if you saw me or just the Empire." Her composure-cracked eyes darting to Ray and the notary as if seeking an escape. "You think this changes anything? People will see you as the manipulator." Malik shook his head. "No, they'll see the truth. And so will you." The high of the confrontation surged through him, not vengeance, but liberation. For once, the discrimination he'd faced, the constant need to prove himself, had armed him with the patience to expose what lay beneath the surface. Samantha grabbed her bag and stormed out the door, slamming behind her, leaving the room in tense quiet. News of Malik's miraculous recovery spread like wildfire through the tech corridors and beyond. Whispers in boardrooms turned to headlines overnight. "Devon secure, founder walks again. After crash, full recovery defies odds." Reporters swarmed the hospital exits, their cameras flashing as Malik emerged for the first time without the wheelchair, flanked by security. Social media exploded with speculation, some praising his resilience, others questioning if it had all been a publicity stunt. But Malik remained silent at first, letting the storm build. He scheduled a press conference at the grand ballroom of the Haven Hotel, the same place where he'd spent those initial days in quiet observation, high above the city. The room buzzed with anticipation as journalists, investors, and industry insiders filled the seats. Microphones lined the podium and live streams beamed the event to thousands online. Malik stepped onto the stage in a tailored navy suit, his stride confident and unhurried, drawing a collective gasp from the crowd. The scars on his arm, visible under the rolled sleeves, seemed to underscore his story more than any words could. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice deep and steady, echoing through the speakers. "I'm grateful for the concern about my health. But today isn't about that. It's about what I learned in those weeks when the world thought I was broken." He paused, scanning the room, meeting eyes that had once glanced away. "When a black man like me, successful, visible, gets injured, the sympathy is fleeting. Instead, you're doubted, undervalued, seen as a liability. I experienced that not through overt hate, but through the subtle shifts, the averted gazes, the whispered calculations, the way people reassess your worth when you're no longer useful." The audience shifted uncomfortably, a few nodding in reluctant agreement. Malik continued, his tone measured but piercing. "I didn't react immediately because I wanted to know if I lost everything, my mobility, my ability to lead my empire, who would stay. In a society that already views black men through lenses of suspicion or exception, I needed to see the truth unfiltered." He didn't name Samantha. He didn't need to. The implication hung in the air like smoke, and the reporters latched on. Questions flew. Was this a test for those around you? "How has this changed your view on trust?" Malik answered sparingly, focusing on broader themes, the quiet discrimination embedded in corporate America, the way success for someone like him was always conditional. As the conference ended, applause rippled through the room, but it felt hollow to him. He hadn't come for validation. The fallout was swift. Old videos resurfaced Samantha's tearful interviews about standing by her man through adversity, or her poised appearances at fundraisers where she'd spoken of unwavering love. Now they played like scenes from a bad script dissected on talk shows and forums. Was it all for show? One headline blared. Social media users pieced together timelines, her frequent media spots during his recovery, her sudden silence now. Samantha slipped out of the hotel through a service door that afternoon, her face shielded by oversized sunglasses, but paparazzi caught the shot anyway. Whispers in her professional circles grew clients pulling back invitations, drying up. In the elite world of venture capital where image was currency, her facade had cracked irreparably. Malik offered no further comment. He didn't fuel the fire with interviews or statements. The truth spread on its own, amplified by those who'd always suspected the performative nature of high society alliances. His board of directors rallied behind him, issuing a statement of full support. Stock prices stabilized, then climbed as investors praised his strategic resilience. For Malik, it wasn't about victory over Samantha. It was about exposing the undercurrents of bias that had shaped his life. Being a black man in power meant constant vigilance, and this ordeal had sharpened his already keen instincts. As the dust settled, Samantha faded from the spotlight, her once glamorous life reduced to damage control. She vanished into obscurity, a cautionary tale in the circles she once dominated. Malik, meanwhile, returned to his work, the scars both visible and invisible, a reminder of the cost of clarity. 2 months later, the buzz of the AI Fraud Prevention Summit in New York filled the convention center, a sea of suits and screens showcasing the latest in cybersecurity tech. Malik made his return to the public eye not as a victim or a scandal center, but as the keynote speaker, his presence commanding the room without a word. He moved through the crowd with ease, no trace of the accident lingering in his step. Whispers followed him, not of pity now, but of admiration for the man who'd turned vulnerability into a lesson. By his side walked Naomi Ellis, a systems designer at Devon Secure Systems. She was a black woman in her mid-30s with a quiet confidence that didn't demand attention. Her dark curls framed a face often lit by the glow of code on her screen, and she wore a simple black blazer over a blouse, professional, unassuming. Naomi had been with the company from its early days, quietly refining the user interfaces that made their AI intuitive and unbreakable. She'd seen Malik not as the founder or the success story, but as the innovator who debated algorithms late into the night, valuing her input without ego. They'd connected during his recovery, though not in the spotlight. Naomi visited the hospital unannounced, bringing coffee and questions about the firm's latest projects, not out of obligation, but genuine interest. She didn't flinch at the wheelchair or probe for details about the crash. Instead, she talked about the work, about life beyond the headlines, seeing him as a colleague, a mind, a person. In a world where Malik had always been scrutinized, his achievements diminished by racial biases, his worth tied to his status, Naomi's gaze was different, steady, respectful, seeing the man beneath the myth. The media dubbed them tech's most discreet power couple, snapping photos as they navigated the event together. Speculation swirled online, from betrayal to this sick. But Malik paid it no mind. He didn't seek the applause of the world anymore. At the summit, he spoke briefly about integrity in AI, drawing parallels to trust in human relationships, subtle nods to his ordeal without dwelling on it. Naomi stood off stage, her smile small but real, a quiet anchor in the chaos. For Malik, the ending wasn't about revenge or triumph over Samantha. It was about reclaiming what mattered: his self-respect, his calm amid storms, and his belief in integrity despite a world quick to judge based on skin color. The discrimination he'd faced, subtle erasures in meetings, assumptions of lesser worth, had forged his resilience, turning pain into power. With Naomi, he found a love rooted in truth, someone who'd stand by him in a wheelchair or on his feet, seeing him fully without calculation. As they left the event hand in hand, the city light stretched out below them once more. Malik no longer felt invisible or undervalued. In a society built on biases, truth and perseverance had proven to be his greatest strengths. And this time, he'd chosen someone who saw that from the start.